I want to talk about language. I want to talk about its impact. I want to talk about bias, how we can change how we speak and communicate. Research has told us that we communicate and speak possibly around, it's contested, but possibly around 20,000 words per day. I probably double that or triple that on any given day talking about language. That's the irony. But I also want to talk about its impact. I really believe, and all the work that I do as an Associate Vice President at the University of Southampton is based and underpinned around language. It doesn't get enough research or credentials in terms of what we do and how we speak and how it can impact a sense of inclusion, a sense of diversity. If we think about how we speak, it will then change our actions. And I think that what we do is what we think and how we communicate that. So quite often, when I was a kid, I don't know where this came from, but sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. What really strikes me here is like sticks and stones may break your bones. There's ambiguity there. But names will never hurt you. This is fundamentally not true. I remember as a kid at school, I was the only black kid. Actually, that's a lie. My sister and myself were at school together. And we were the only black children in our school. I remember the names. I'm 49. I tell you that so you think that, oh gosh, she looks quite young for 49. That's how I use language. But I remember 40 years ago the names. You know the names that I would have been called at school. I don't need to tell you the names that I was called. The worst days were I was called the N-word. And I still remember that. I was probably 5, 6, I still remember that. I remember walking to Sainsbury's, because you could back in those days, you could walk safely as a 6 or 7-year-old. I was probably a bit older. My mum would send me off with a note to go and get some things, and they would come back. It was the good old days, the 80s. And I remember 2 kids saying to me, "Get back on the jam jar." I didn't really know what it meant. I wasn't sure, but I knew it wasn't good. And I still remember that. I don't remember all the kind of actions and things, but I do remember the language. Language matters. It's impactful. How we speak to each other, not just in an organization, not just through strategy and policies, not just through governance, but how we speak to each other every day matters. The takeaway that I want you to all hopefully walk away with today is that we can change that immediately. Doesn't need a strategy, doesn't need a policy. We can change it now, today, together. You can make a pact and say, actually, I want to change the way I speak. I want to add kindness and empathy in the way that I see other people. It shapes us. The other day, actually Christmas, I was at Waitrose. I say Waitrose because I want you to know how I shop. It was actually Aldi. No, it wasn't. It was Waitrose. I was getting some olives and some sparkling water or whatever I was getting. And outside there, when I came out with my ridiculously expensive purchases, there was a woman selling the Big Issue. I was feeling, good. It was Christmas time, and I had some money on me. I had some cash on me, and I gave her some money, and I walked away, feeling good about myself. But something didn't sit. Something didn't feel right. I walked away, sat in my car. I didn't even wish her a Merry Christmas or ask her name. There was no conversation. It was operational. It was transactional. Yesterday, I saw her walking up the hill, actually, which was breathtaking. But I saw her, and she said, "Hey, how are you?" She remembered me. And I had my opportunity to have that conversation. Language matters. I asked her name, Monica. Monica, how are you? The non-invasive question, the how question, the can question, not the what, the why, the where question. She said, "I'm not so good." We had a conversation. I said, "Have you got a card reader?" She had a card reader, gave us money. But it wasn't about the transaction. It was about the conversation. I felt something. She felt something. It was really, really important. What we often do, and we've probably all done this morning, and said, "Morning, how are you?" And we say, "Yeah, not so bad, cool." And we go on, and we're like, what is that? Nothing has happened. It's a transaction. It's not even a transaction. It's more operational. It's more procedural. When people say to me, "Good morning, how are you?" it then gives me the power to say, "I'm not so great, I'm okay." Not, "Morning, are you okay?" Very, very different, very subtle, but very, very different. If we can then be more empathetic, more specific in how we communicate. Are you going to do this today? Possibly not. Are you going to remember the questions? The power is in the questions that we ask. We're obsessed. Language is obsessed with meaning. It's obsessed with trying to extract something, trying to get something, trying to learn something, trying to understand something. I think language is about feeling something. And we do it with babies. We do it with children. When a baby's born, I've got 4 children. My youngest is 5. I've got a granddaughter who's 2. Just watching them absorb language, start to speak. When a baby's born, they cry, they communicate with us. Babies will say, well, babies don't say anything, but babies will cry and they communicate, whether they're stressed or hungry. My 5-year-old, he talks. He's probably at 80,000 words, you know. He talks. Whoa, does he talk? But when he comes home from school and I ask him a question, "How was your day at school?" Or no, I ask him the question, "What did you do at school today?" We all ask that question, yeah? The answer we sometimes get back is, "I can't remember." Right? The reason they say they can't remember is because for him, he's done 6 hours at school drawing and playing. But it's hard for him. The question is invasive. My question is invasive. It's about me extracting. It disempowers him. I need to empower him. So I ask the question, "Hey, son, is there anything that you did at school today that you could teach Daddy?" Oh, it empowers him to tell me. He starts to tell me about what he did. "Is there any words that you learned that I could learn?" "Oh, yeah, we learned about Brontosaurus." He loves dinosaurs. He loves ancient Egypt. He starts to tell me in all the glory about his day because my question is a better question. It's more empathetic. It's real. It's not detracting from him. It empowers him. A couple of weeks ago in the Champions League, I play basketball. It's been said. I coach, but I play. I still play with my just. Draymond Green is an NBA basketball player. He was at the Champions League. He was on ITV. All this information is irrelevant, really, but the point is, he was on TV with his son. Thierry Henry asked him a question. You can probably go and find it on YouTube, or some of you might have seen it. And it was a beautiful moment by Draymond Green as a father. Thierry Henry asked Draymond Green's son, "Who do you think will win today?" The W questions. Be careful of the W questions. They're invasive. His son's around 7 or 8, and there was silence. It's a simple question, you might think, but there was silence. He didn't know how to answer it, his son. And Draymond Green interacted, didn't disempower his son, didn't answer for him, but said, rephrase the question. "Who do you think will win, Real Madrid or Borussia Dortmund?" His son said Real Madrid. He was right, they did win. He empowered his son with the question. And I thought it was a beautiful moment and a good testament of how we can be much more kind and empathetic with what we do, because language attempts to understand everything. It doesn't look at the process. Sometimes you're processing information. Sometimes we need that radical, active listening or that space to talk. How often do we talk or have conversations and we talk over each other? Or we don't wait for that person to finish? That's not empathetic language. That's not inclusive. And I think we can have the power to really change not just ourselves and our families, but also policies. We see the language that we use in the wider political environment, how we describe immigrants, how we describe people of different sexual orientations, different races, floods, aliens. An economic immigrant, if I said economic immigrant and you closed your eyes, you would have a particular vision in your head of what they look like, what ethnicity, what race. But I bet you're possibly not thinking an economic immigrant of someone who's gone and opened a bar in Spain, Ibiza, who's white, Caucasian male. If I then said international nurse, you would have another image in your head. If I said doctor, you would have a gender in your head. If I had surgeon, language is powerful. Language is bias as well. We can't get away from bias, but we need to be aware of bias. We need to be accountable towards our bias and then work with that every day. Like I mentioned, the kind of invasiveness of language, the W questions, the operational nature of, hey, how are you? Stop and say, hey, haven't got time at the moment, but let's catch up and have a coffee and have a real conversation. Be more specific. Because we can't have these transactional utterances every day. Someone said to me 2 weeks ago, they said, I say good morning to someone, and he always comes back and says, good morning, Chief, and it really annoys me. And I've been doing that for about 5 years. I said, have you ever asked his name? He's like, no. I said, you've been having these utterances for 5 years, and you haven't really asked each other's name. It's just procedural. What we can do is become more empathetic and transformational. That transformative value of having conversations, I think, is really, really important. We can do it today, and we must do it today. If you want to know how to learn this and, you want to spread the word, ask your friends, your family, your partners to take you to an expensive restaurant or an expensive hotel or both. Because that's a space where they're obsessed with service. They don't ask invasive questions. They will say to you, is there anything more I can get you? How was your meal? Can I order you? Can I fluff your pillows or whatever they do? But it's more the fact that they are interested in how you feel. And we have to embed feeling into how we speak. The reason why? So we can feel seen, safe, and supported. I use this mantra at the university all the time. I kind of limit it, I kind of bring it down and say, what's more important? I want to shorten and narrow those distances of how we speak. I don't want to just go in and say, sometimes I go up in randoms. The other day I was in a lift and I was like, how's it going? And they're like, who's this guy talking to me in the lift? I want people to feel seen, safe, and supported in a world that doesn't always do that. It's divisive. Those distances are growing with social media, with opinions that we see online, the language that we use. We need to come together. A little acronym, which I love acronyms. I love language. I talk about it all the time, as I've said. Speak. How do we speak? Speak with specificity. Some people talk to me about fear, and they say, I'm very fearful of misgendering someone or getting something wrong. I don't know how to talk about race. I don't know how to talk about sexual orientation. Ask the question. The power is in the question. Empathetic question, by the way. Can I ask? I get asked the question all the time. Where are you from? Born in Winchester. Actually, Southampton. But born here. The assumption is that I'm not from here. So there's a weight to that question. And then you're like, where are you really from? Where are your parents from? The specificity, I always say I was born, because it's more complex. I was born in Southampton, but I was born to a mother from West Africa, Sierra Leone, and a father from Cameroon. I give them all this detail. And they're like, oh, okay. I give them the detail. Yeah, sorry I asked. But I give them the detail because that specificity is my identity. It shapes how I'm seen. Don't ask me where I'm from if you don't want to listen to the answer. Be patient. You'll get it wrong. You ask questions like where you're from. I ask the question all the time, but be patient with empathy, with awareness. All we can do is be aware. All we can do is be aware of our bias. We can't get rid of it. Bias is innate. What that can't lead to is prejudice. What that can't lead to is discrimination. Just be aware. People say, what can I do? Be aware. Be aware. I'm aware of my privilege as a man. I'm aware of my privilege of being able to speak the English language, able-bodied, and be kind. It's not often talked about. Be kind to each other through your language. I think if we think about how we speak, we think about how we act. I want to leave you with this little diagram I drew up. This is what I do at weekends. That's what I do. The first diagram, the first that you can see on the left, your left. This is what I call operational language. There's no loop there. There's no space. It's like me saying, how are you? And then off I go. How are you? We're not really listening. I don't really care. You sometimes get it in supermarkets, don't you? They're just kind of talking to someone whilst, and you're like, I'm here in Waitrose, you know. I'm paying over the odds. And then you have transactional language where there's a bit more of a recognition, where there's a loop. How are you today? I'm okay. You don't really get into it that much. Transactional. What we need to move to is the empathetic, the transformational language, where there's lots of things going on. But importantly, there's radical, active listening, like you listening to me today. Hopefully, those spaces we can then begin to be more kind, more empathetic, close down those spaces, and make sure we grow. I want to leave you one thing. Language is like a knife. If you use a knife carefully, it can be a great tool. Very sharp tool. If you use a knife carelessly, it's a weapon. And it can be really dangerous. So my provocation is to you, how are you going to use language? What can you do today to make sure that you're careful with your language, it's reflectful, it's kind, it's empathetic, and it's powerful? Because I think we can build a better world, and that's my one big idea. Thank you.